Have you ever found yourself deep inside a video game, building your world, creating your perfect design, only to stumble upon something that sends chills down your spine? What if I told you a teen's innocent Minecraft build, something they created with pure imagination, mysteriously matched the details of a real-life crime scene? No, this isn't some weird coincidence, and it's not a scripted story for you to brush off. This is real, and as we dive into this bizarre and eerie situation, you won't believe how it all connects. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll have answers to one of the most chilling and mind-bending questions. How could something so surreal and strange happen? Stick with me, I promise you won't regret it. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like there's something more to a game than just pixels and blocks? Minecraft, as you know, is a world of limitless possibilities, a place where teens, like you, can escape, create, and build anything their heart desires. But what if that very space, where you let your imagination run wild, could end up being more than just a game? Could it somehow mirror something dark, something real that happens in the world around us? Imagine one day you're building a virtual house, and then, without any warning, you uncover a detail in your creation that doesn't just resemble reality, it matches an unsolved crime scene down to the smallest, most unsettling details. Would you be able to explain it? Would you want to? And what would you do if it led you to an answer you never expected, one that pulls you deeper into something far darker than you thought Minecraft could ever be? Right now, you're probably wondering, is this some kind of fiction? A prank? I assure you, this is no joke. It's not some weird, clickbait story. It's a true account that, once you dive into it, will leave you questioning the limits of reality and virtual spaces. You see, a regular teenager, just like many of you watching this right now, was simply enjoying Minecraft, building their world piece by piece. It was a casual game night, nothing out of the ordinary, and yet in the middle of this world they crafted, something unusual caught their attention. There, hidden in the blocks and bricks of their creation, was a design, a structure that seemed strangely familiar. At first, they thought it was just a coincidence, a cool building that looked like something out of a mystery movie or a true crime show. But as they examined it further, they realized it wasn't a coincidence at all. No, this building, this structure was far too close to something real. Something that had happened only a few months earlier, in a place not far from where the teen lived. But what exactly was this real-life event that mirrored their virtual creation? I'll get to that soon. Now, let's take a step back for a moment. As someone who's probably seen their fair share of YouTube videos about strange events, unexplained occurrences, or mysteries, you might be thinking, this can't be true. But believe me, when you hear the full story, you'll realize that this incident is like nothing else. You'll start to piece things together with me, and just like this teen did, you'll wonder if there's something beyond just the game world. Is Minecraft really just a game, or could there be something far more mysterious about how our creations in the virtual world somehow bleed into reality? Now, I can already tell some of you might be on the edge of your seat, trying to figure out what happens next. But I need you to hold tight. Trust me, we're getting to the good part. You've clicked on this video for a reason. You're here because you want answers, and you want to know how a Minecraft build could match a real-life crime scene. And I promise you, as we go deeper into this investigation, the answers are going to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about the virtual and real worlds. But before we get there, I want you to picture something for a moment. Imagine yourself sitting in front of your computer, headset on, fully immersed in Minecraft. You're not just playing, you're building something grand, something epic. You've created every block, every corner of your world, giving it your own unique touch. It's an extension of yourself, your creativity, your escape. Now, imagine if that very thing, the world you've created with your own hands, starts to take on a life of its own. Not just in the game, but in the real world, where people are whispering about it, investigating it, and trying to figure out how a teenager could have possibly created a scene that mirrors something that really happened. Could your mind handle it? Could you handle being the one to unravel that mystery? This teen, in the middle of an average gaming session, became the center of something strange, and as much as they wanted to ignore it, the connection became impossible to overlook. Every detail, from the positioning of the structures in the Minecraft world to the eerie resemblance of the scene on the police reports, everything pointed toward something that seemed orchestrated. But here's the twist: the teen never saw the crime scene photos. They didn't know anything about the case at all before they built their virtual structure. So how could their Minecraft build match something so exact? Was it a case of chance? Or was there something else at play here? Something that might make you question fate, coincidence, and even the games you play. The situation gets even more unsettling when the teen starts to look closer at the elements they placed in their build. Objects, buildings, and even the layout of the scene were oddly similar to what investigators were piecing together. The way the house was arranged, the layout of rooms, the use of certain colors and designs that matched police sketches. How could this be? And what would happen if the teen didn't just walk away from this, but decided to dig deeper into the strange connection they'd uncovered? Could their Minecraft skills actually be the key to unlocking something far more sinister than anyone had ever expected? Stay with me because we're just getting started, and the deeper we go, the darker it gets. But here's where it gets even more personal for you, the viewer. What if I told you that you might have the chance to solve the mystery alongside this teen? That, as we piece together the clues, your input could help uncover the truth. What if, by the end of this video, you walk away with knowledge that connects the virtual world of Minecraft with something real, something much more sinister? You'll have to keep watching to see how this crazy and unexpected story unfolds. I promise you, the answers are coming, and by the end of this, you won't be able to stop thinking about it. But before we move forward, remember this: not everything in the game world is just pixels. Some things go much deeper than you'd ever expect. And I have to warn you, once you discover the truth, there's no going back. So grab a snack, get comfortable, and don't even think about clicking away because you're going to want to stay until the very end. The truth is closer than you think, and I promise you won't be able to predict where this story goes next. As we dive deeper into this mystery, let me introduce you to the teen at the heart of it all. His name is Ryan, a typical 16-year-old with a love for gaming and a knack for creativity. Ryan wasn't a usual gamer. He wasn't just playing Minecraft, he was crafting entire worlds, designing intricate builds that took hours, sometimes even days, to perfect. His passion for the game wasn't just a hobby, it was a form of self-expression, a way for him to escape from the pressures of school, family, and the world around him. Ryan had a small group of friends who shared his enthusiasm for gaming, but beyond that, he was a relatively quiet kid. His family life was typical, nothing too out of the ordinary. His mom, a local schoolteacher, was always there for him, and his dad worked long hours as a software engineer. Ryan's life seemed pretty normal. He wasn't exactly popular in school, but he wasn't an outcast either. He was just there. But things started to shift when he discovered something that would change everything: the connection between his Minecraft build and the real-life crime scene. It all started a few weeks earlier, when Ryan got the idea to build a sprawling mansion in his Minecraft world, a structure that would take weeks to finish. It wasn't just any mansion, it was a reflection of his own personal dream home, something large, majestic, and detailed beyond what he had ever attempted before. The design was grand, with wide open spaces, multiple stories, and a large, carefully crafted garden. Ryan spent hours on it, tweaking every corner, making sure every block was in its place. But as the project progressed, he couldn't help but feel a strange sensation, like there was something unsettling about the way certain elements were coming together. It was hard to pinpoint, but it was there, a nagging feeling that this creation, which he had put so much effort into, was somehow connected to something much larger than just a game. Ryan's friends had noticed his obsession with the build. They were used to him getting lost in his projects, but lately, there was a new intensity to his focus. He would stay up late into the night, only stopping when his eyes were too tired to keep the screen in focus. He had become fixated on making the mansion perfect, and nothing else seemed to matter. His friends thought it was just another of his quirky phases, but it wasn't just the build itself that had Ryan intrigued. He began to notice little details in his Minecraft mansion that seemed oddly familiar. At first, it was the shape of the windows, which seemed to resemble a design he had seen in a magazine once. Then, it was the layout of the rooms. Everything seemed almost too precise. Ryan couldn't explain it, but something about it felt like he had seen it somewhere before. It wasn't until a late-night gaming session that Ryan finally discovered the truth. He had taken a break from his build and was scrolling through the news on his phone when he came across a story that made his blood run cold. It was a crime scene update, detailing a gruesome murder that had occurred just a few miles from his house. As he scrolled through the article, his eyes landed on the photos of the crime scene, specifically, the house where the murder had taken place. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. The layout of the house, the way the rooms were arranged, the placement of the furniture, it all seemed so familiar. He squinted at the screen, feeling his stomach twist into knots. The details were uncanny. The mansion he had spent weeks building in Minecraft looked exactly like the house in the news article. His pulse quickened, and a cold shiver ran down his spine. Now, Ryan wasn't the type to panic easily. But this was different. The more he examined the pictures, the more he realized that his build wasn't just a random creation. It mirrored the crime scene down to the smallest details, including the positioning of the windows and the peculiar arrangement of the garden outside. He sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at his screen, his mind racing. How could this be? He had never seen the crime scene before, he didn't even know it existed until now. So how was it possible that his Minecraft world was identical to a real house tied to a brutal crime? Ryan's first instinct was to dismiss it. It had to be a coincidence, right? After all, there were only so many ways to design a mansion in Minecraft. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was no coincidence. It wasn't just the house, it was the unsettling feeling that something darker was lurking just beneath the surface. And as the days went on, Ryan began to dig deeper into the details of the case, hoping for some kind of explanation that would clear his name. But instead of answers, he found more questions, things that only made the situation feel even more twisted. The crime in question had occurred only a month ago, and the investigation was still ongoing. A man had been found dead in his home, and the police were stumped. There was no sign of forced entry, no obvious motive, and the victim's personal life seemed unremarkable. The only clue was the house itself, a seemingly normal suburban home that, for some reason, seemed to hold the key to everything. Ryan, being the naturally curious person he was, began to scour the internet for any details he could find about the case. He spent hours searching for news articles, police reports, and even interviews with neighbors and local residents. What he found didn't help, if anything, it only deepened the mystery. One of the most bizarre details Ryan uncovered was the strange behavior of the victim's neighbors. A few of them had mentioned hearing noises late at night coming from the victim's house. The noises were described as unusual, almost like someone was rearranging furniture or knocking on walls. But there was one neighbor who had claimed to see something even stranger, a figure lurking around the house in the days leading up to the murder. But the descriptions of this figure were vague at best, no one could agree on what they had seen. Was it a person? An animal? A shadow? The authorities had dismissed these claims as unsubstantiated, but Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than met the eye. As Ryan continued to investigate, he began to uncover more strange connections between the crime scene and his Minecraft mansion. The layout of the rooms, the design of the garden, even the placement of certain objects in his virtual world, all of it seemed too precise to be a mere coincidence. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he wasn't the only one who had noticed the eerie similarities. A few of his online friends had started to mention it, too, commenting on the odd details of his build. Some of them joked about how it looked like a crime scene, but Ryan didn't find it funny. He began to wonder if his friends had noticed something he hadn't. Had he been building something far more sinister than he realized? But here's the twist, while Ryan was busy digging into the case and trying to make sense of the eerie connection between his Minecraft build and the crime scene, he started receiving strange messages. At first, they seemed harmless, just random comments from people who had seen his build online. But as time went on, the messages grew darker. Some of the people who reached out seemed to know far too much about his build and the crime scene. One person even claimed to have seen Ryan's mansion before the murder took place. But how could that be possible? Ryan had never shared his build with anyone outside of his group of friends. The more he thought about it, the more Ryan realized that he was caught in something bigger than just a game. Was there a connection between the victim's death and his Minecraft creation? Was there someone or something out there manipulating the world around him? Ryan didn't know the answers, but one thing was clear: he was no longer just a teenager building a virtual mansion. He was now part of a puzzle that stretched beyond the boundaries of the game itself, and the deeper he dug, the more he realized that the truth might be something he was not prepared to handle. What had started as an innocent game had now spiraled into a mystery that threatened to consume him. And the more Ryan uncovered, the more he began to question everything. What if his Minecraft build wasn't just a coincidence? What if, somehow, it had predicted the crime? Or worse, what if it was a clue to something even darker? The only way to find out was to continue down this twisted path, and Ryan knew, deep down, that there was no turning back. As Ryan's investigation deepened, things started to take an even darker turn. What had seemed like a simple, unsettling coincidence, the strange match between his Minecraft build and the real-life crime scene, was quickly unraveling into something far more sinister. The messages he had been receiving were becoming more cryptic and ominous, and it wasn't long before Ryan realized that someone, or something, didn't want him to keep digging. His search for answers began to feel like a dangerous game, one in which he wasn't sure who was playing, or even if the rules were real. Just when he thought he was getting closer to the truth, something happened that would send everything spiraling into chaos. One evening, after a long day of searching through old news reports and diving deeper into the police documents, Ryan sat down to review the files he had saved. He had been keeping everything organized on his computer, from crime scene photos to sketches of the house layout, trying to match every detail between his Minecraft build and the real-life location. As he went through his files, something struck him as odd. One of the key pieces of evidence, the original police report detailing the victim's house and the exact location of the crime, was gone. Vanished. Ryan's heart raced as he checked the file again, but it was nowhere to be found. He frantically searched his entire computer, but the report had disappeared without a trace, as if it had been erased from existence. His mind raced with the implications. How could it just vanish like that? He hadn't deleted it. There was no way he had accidentally clicked on something that wiped it out. This felt deliberate. Someone was clearly trying to keep him from finding out too much. At first, Ryan thought it could have been a mistake, maybe some kind of glitch or error. But the longer he thought about it, the more the thought of someone intentionally removing it from his reach seemed likely. But who would go so far as to erase a piece of evidence from his computer? Ryan had been cautious, he hadn't shared his findings with anyone outside of his immediate circle. But as he sat there, staring at the empty screen, he realized how naive he had been. Someone must have been watching him, someone who didn't want the truth to come out. He couldn't ignore the possibility that someone had been following his every move, monitoring his online searches. But who could it be? And why did they want him to stop? It wasn't just the disappearing report that made Ryan's stomach churn. As he sat there in the dim light of his room, trying to process what had just happened, he received another message. This one was different. It was from a new contact, someone he didn't recognize. The message was short, but its meaning was clear: stop digging. You're in over your head. Ryan froze, his fingers hovering above the keyboard. Who was this person? How did they know what he had been doing? The words sent a chill down his spine, and for the first time, he questioned whether he should heed the warning. But the curiosity gnawing at him, the need to understand what was really happening, was too strong. He couldn't just stop now. But the deeper he got into this, the more dangerous it seemed. Over the next few days, things only got worse. Ryan's friends started acting strangely around him, avoiding his questions and changing the subject whenever he tried to talk about the crime scene or his build. He couldn't shake the feeling that they knew more than they were letting on. One friend in particular, Jake, had been unusually distant. Jake was one of the few people Ryan had trusted with the details of the mystery, but now, whenever they spoke, Jake seemed nervous, glancing over his shoulder as if he was afraid someone might overhear. Ryan tried to confront him about it, but Jake just brushed him off, claiming he was overthinking things. Still, Ryan couldn't help but notice the unease in Jake's eyes. Something wasn't right. And then there was the phone call. Ryan's heart still pounded whenever he thought about it. He had been at his desk, reviewing some old news stories about the crime when his phone rang. The voice on the other end was low, almost whispering, but Ryan immediately recognized the tone of the person speaking. It was someone he had never met before, someone who claimed to have information about the case. The voice was distant, as if the person was calling from somewhere far away, and yet, the words felt disturbingly personal. The caller told Ryan that he was getting too close and warned him to stop investigating before things got worse. The caller didn't say much more, just that Ryan's obsession with the case was dangerous, and that he should leave it alone. Ryan tried to ask more questions, but the line went dead. He stared at his phone, confusion and fear swirling in his chest. Who was this person? And why were they so determined to stop him? Ryan wasn't the type to back down from a challenge, but the stakes were rising, and he knew it. Something was happening here, something far beyond a simple case of mistaken virtual reality. The more he dug, the more pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, but they only led him deeper into a web of suspicion and secrecy. The next night, after getting no help from his friends, he decided to pay a visit to the local police station. He knew he had to do it, he needed answers. But when he arrived, he was met with an unexpected obstacle. The officer in charge of the investigation, a seasoned detective named Officer Gray, seemed unusually cold when Ryan approached him. Gray had been one of the first to respond to the crime scene, and Ryan thought that maybe he could get some clarity on what was really going on. But when Ryan tried to ask about the specifics of the crime scene, Officer Gray's demeanor changed. The detective was polite, but there was a nervous edge to his voice, something Ryan couldn't quite place. He was being evasive, clearly uncomfortable with the questions Ryan was asking. Just as Ryan was about to push harder, Gray's phone rang. The detective excused himself, stepping out into the hallway to take the call, leaving Ryan alone in the interrogation room. The moment Gray left, Ryan noticed something strange, a folder on the desk with a label he hadn't seen before. Without thinking, he reached over and opened it. Inside were photos of the crime scene, but as he flipped through them, something caught his eye. There, at the bottom of one of the pictures, was an image of the very mansion Ryan had built in Minecraft. The layout, the garden, the rooms, all of it was the same. But what shocked him more was the name written at the top of the report, property of Detective Gray. Ryan's mind raced. Why was his Minecraft mansion in the police files? Why did Detective Gray have this, and why hadn't he told Ryan about it? Was Gray involved somehow? And if so, what role did he play in the larger mystery? The room seemed to close in on him as he struggled to process what he had just discovered. As he turned to leave, he felt a cold, familiar sensation creeping over him, a sense that he was being watched. But when he glanced over his shoulder, no one was there. Just as Ryan left the police station, he heard his phone buzz in his pocket. It was another message, this time from Jake. But instead of a simple text, it was a link to a video. The title was cryptic, "Everything You've Been Looking For Is Here." Ryan clicked on it without hesitation, his heart pounding in his chest. What could it be? Was this the breakthrough he had been hoping for? Or was it another trap? The screen loaded, and the video began. But what he saw next made everything he thought he knew shatter into pieces. The video was of his Minecraft mansion, the very one he had been building for weeks. But there was something different about it. It wasn't just a game. The mansion was surrounded by police cars, a crime scene tape stretched across the yard, and there, in the driveway, was a body that looked strangely familiar. The twist. Ryan was standing there in the video. Yes, Ryan stood there, staring at the video on his phone, his mind raced, but no matter how hard he tried to wrap his head around it, he couldn't make sense of what he had just seen. There, in the eerie footage, was the mansion he had built in Minecraft, with police cars surrounding it and a body lying in the driveway, his own body. But how could that be? How could it be him when he was still standing here, alive and breathing, in the middle of a tangled mystery that was quickly spiraling out of control? The questions flooded his mind faster than he could process them, and for a split second, he felt paralyzed by the overwhelming sense of dread that had taken over him. Was it a hoax? A sick joke? Or was something far more sinister at play here, something that linked him directly to the crime scene in a way he couldn't even begin to understand? Before he could gather his thoughts, his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from an unknown number or another cryptic clue. It was from his mom. The text was short, but the urgency in her words sent a chill through his spine. "Ryan, where are you? You need to come home right now. I don't know how, but I think someone's been inside the house. His heart skipped a beat, and before he could even process what that meant, a wave of panic hit him. He could feel his pulse racing in his ears as he jumped into action, grabbing his jacket and rushing out of the house. His mind raced. Had someone been watching him all this time? Was this all part of something far bigger than he had ever imagined? The walk home felt like an eternity. Ryan's phone buzzed again, but this time, he ignored it. His thoughts were clouded, his focus solely on getting home as quickly as possible. When he finally reached the house, he pushed open the door with a shaky hand, expecting to find his mom in distress, maybe even someone waiting for him. But to his shock, the house was eerily silent. No signs of forced entry, no visible disturbances, everything looked perfectly normal. He called out for his mom, but there was no answer. His heart began to thud in his chest as he crept through the house, checking each room, his senses on high alert. It wasn't until he reached the basement door that he noticed something strange, a small, folded piece of paper on the ground, tucked just beneath the doorframe. His name was scrawled across it in messy handwriting, and with a deep sense of foreboding, he bent down to pick it up. The words inside were simple, but chilling: "You're not safe. They're watching." The note seemed to confirm his worst fears. But who was they? And what did it mean? Ryan's hand trembled as he crumpled the note in his fist. He scanned the house one more time, but there was still no sign of his mom. It was as though she had vanished into thin air. Panic surged through him as he rushed to her room, but the bed was empty, and her phone was lying on the nightstand. A sharp sense of dread twisted in his stomach. This wasn't just about the crime scene anymore. Something much darker was at play, and it was closing in on him from all directions. In a haze of fear and confusion, Ryan's mind flashed back to the video he had seen, the one where his own body was found at the mansion. Was it possible that his mom was somehow involved in this mess? The thought was almost too much to bear. But deep down, Ryan knew that he couldn't rule anyone out. The further he went down this rabbit hole, the more he realized that the lines between friend and foe were beginning to blur. His friends, Jake especially, had been acting strange for days. Had they been hiding something from him? Were they protecting him, or were they part of the very thing that was slowly unraveling his life? The intensity of the situation hit him in waves, and before he could think clearly, he reached for his phone again. This time, he couldn't ignore the buzzing notification. It was a message from Jake, the one person who had always been there for him, or so he had thought. The message was short, just a link to another video, but Jake's text was different this time. It was pleading, almost frantic: "You need to see this. It's the only way you'll understand. Trust me." Ryan felt a mix of suspicion and fear flood through him. Had Jake been hiding something all along? Was he involved in the same twisted game that Ryan had unknowingly stepped into? Ryan's fingers hovered over the screen as he debated whether to open the link. But the urgency in Jake's message, the desperation that came through despite the simplicity of the text, made it impossible for him to resist. He tapped the link. The video loaded quickly, but as the screen flickered to life, Ryan's stomach churned with confusion and disbelief. It wasn't a video of his Minecraft mansion or the police investigation this time. No, this was something far worse. The video showed a man, someone Ryan didn't recognize, standing in a dark room, his face obscured by shadows. The man spoke slowly, deliberately, as if every word carried weight. "The game isn't just a game," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. "It's a reflection. You're not just building blocks, Ryan. You're building fate. And fate has a way of catching up with you." As the man spoke, the camera zoomed out to reveal the same mansion Ryan had been building for weeks. But there was something different about it now. The walls seemed to ripple as if the mansion was alive, breathing, shifting. Ryan's heart skipped a beat as the man continued. "You've opened the door, but you're not ready to walk through it. Stop before it's too late. Trust me." The video ended abruptly, the screen going black. Ryan sat there in stunned silence, his mind reeling from what he had just seen. Who was this man? What did he mean by building fate? And why was Jake involved in all of this? But before he could process anything further, his phone rang again. This time, it wasn't a text, it was an actual call. And the number? Unknown. With a sense of dread, Ryan answered. Ryan, a voice said, smooth and cold, sending a chill down his spine. It was a voice he didn't recognize, but somehow it felt familiar, too familiar. You've been asking too many questions, kid. It's time to stop. It's time to let it go before it's too late. The voice paused, and Ryan could hear a soft chuckle on the other end. Your mom, well, let's just say she's safer with us. For now. But don't worry. You'll see her soon. Just keep digging, and you won't like what you find. Trust me on that. The line went dead before Ryan could say a word. His heart was pounding in his chest as he sat there in the silence, trying to process the implications of the call. What had they done to his mom? Who were they? Was this all some sick game, or was it something more? The pieces were there, scattered and fragmented, but the puzzle was more twisted and complicated than he ever could have imagined. Just then, his phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a message from Jake or a new cryptic warning. It was a single picture. Ryan opened it slowly, his fingers trembling. What he saw in the image made his blood run cold. It was a photograph of his Minecraft mansion, the same one he had spent so many sleepless nights working on. But it was different now. In the center of the image was a figure, standing in front of the mansion, a dark silhouette barely visible in the shadows. But what sent a jolt of fear through Ryan was the unmistakable detail: the figure was wearing the same clothes as his mom. Ryan's mind reeled, trying to piece together the puzzle, but everything was slipping further and further out of his grasp. And then, in a flash of realization, he knew there was something much more dangerous than a mere crime scene here. Something far more dangerous than a game. Whoever was behind all of this had orchestrated a nightmare that was closing in on him from all sides, and he had no idea who to trust anymore. The line between reality and fiction had blurred, and Ryan didn't know if he would ever be able to find his way back. The night had settled into an eerie silence, a silence that seemed to press in on Ryan from all sides. His hands were clammy, his heart thudding erratically in his chest. The messages, the videos, the strange disappearances, everything was spiraling out of control, and now, more than ever, Ryan felt as though he was being watched. But by whom? And why? The creeping sense of dread had become a constant companion, gnawing at him like an itch he couldn't scratch. No matter how hard he tried to push it away, it only seemed to grow stronger. It was late, the kind of late where the world outside had all but disappeared, leaving only the oppressive weight of his own thoughts. Ryan had spent the last few hours trying to make sense of the string of events that had led him here, to this point where he felt as though the walls were closing in on him. The video with his mom, the mysterious messages, and the chilling threats from that strange, anonymous voice, it all pointed to something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. But what exactly was it? His mind kept racing, chasing fragments of clues that didn't seem to fit together. Every time he thought he had a grasp on the situation, another twist would throw him off course. The pieces were there, but the puzzle was too distorted, too warped to put together. As the minutes ticked by, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that someone was inside his house, watching him from the shadows. He had checked every room earlier, sure that he was alone, but now, the house seemed to hum with an unnatural stillness. He couldn't explain it, but something in the air felt wrong. It wasn't just the fear of the unknown, it was something deeper, a bone-deep sense of unease that settled in the pit of his stomach and refused to let go. Without thinking, he grabbed his phone, needing to hear from someone, anyone, to ground him in reality. He stared at the screen for a long moment, wondering if calling Jake would do any good. But before he could decide, his phone buzzed again. A message. It was from his mom, but it wasn't like any text she'd ever sent before. The words were jumbled, almost nonsensical, as if she were trying to tell him something, but couldn't quite get it out. Ryan, please, get out, it's not real, they're coming. The words felt like they were torn from her, desperation in every letter. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine. His mom had always been the calm, collected one, the steady presence in his life. This message, her panic, her fear, sent his heart racing. Where was she? What had happened to her? Why was she sending a message like this? The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he stood motionless, the phone still in his hand. He wasn't alone in the house. There was someone else here, someone who had been moving through the shadows all along. He was sure of it now. But who? And why? Ryan's breath quickened as his mind spun in circles, trying to make sense of the mounting pressure, the sense of imminent danger closing in around him. The walls seemed to close tighter with every passing second, suffocating him in a way he couldn't describe. The paranoia was overwhelming, a constant whisper in his ear, telling him to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. Just as he was about to turn to leave the room, a loud crash shattered the stillness. The noise came from downstairs, from the living room, and it was enough to freeze Ryan in place. His pulse pounded in his ears as he strained to listen. Someone was definitely in the house, and they weren't trying to be subtle anymore. His mind raced, panicked thoughts colliding with each other in a frantic jumble. Should he call the police? Try to escape? But what if they were already watching him? What if the danger had already infiltrated every corner of his life? What if there was no one left to trust? He swallowed hard, his throat dry as he slowly made his way toward the stairs, his footsteps echoing unnervingly in the silence. The house felt like a maze, each room holding some new terror. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, his phone buzzed again. It was another message, but this time, it wasn't from his mom. It was from Jake. "Ryan, they know. They know what we did. They're not just after you anymore. I'm sorry. It's too late. Get out, or you're next." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. What had Jake meant by that? What did he mean by what we did? Ryan's mind swirled, but before he could process it further, he heard something, a faint scuffling noise coming from the kitchen. He froze, his body tensing in response to the sound. The adrenaline surged, but his thoughts were a whirlwind, spinning faster and faster. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. Was this it? Was this the moment where everything would fall apart? He had to move. He had to act. But every instinct screamed for him to stay put, to keep quiet, to blend into the shadows. He held his breath as the sound grew closer, and then, as if the universe had decided to toy with him, the kitchen light flickered on. Ryan stood frozen in place, his body shaking, every nerve on edge. Someone was in the kitchen. Someone had been moving through the house, silently, waiting for the perfect moment to make their move. But as the door to the kitchen swung open, his stomach dropped. It wasn't a stranger. It was his mom. But something was wrong. Her eyes were wide, glassy, and vacant, as if she wasn't entirely there. She didn't even look at him as she walked into the room, her movements stiff, mechanical, like a puppet being controlled by invisible strings. "Mom," Ryan whispered, his voice barely audible as he stepped toward her. The words felt foreign on his tongue, unnatural, as if he had spoken them too many times before, like an old, worn-out question that had no answer. But she didn't respond. She didn't even blink. She just stood there, staring at the wall, her hands clenched at her sides. Ryan's heart skipped a beat, his breath caught in his chest. He knew something was wrong, but what? Was she in some kind of trance? What was happening? As he took a step forward, his phone buzzed once more, this time with an alert, a news notification that sent his blood running cold. Local teen found dead in a crime scene that mirrors a popular Minecraft build. Police investigating connection. Ryan's heart slammed into his ribs as he read the headline. It was him. The story was about him. But how? How could this be happening? His mind reeled, unable to grasp the impossible reality of what he was seeing. The article spoke of a murder, a crime scene eerily similar to the mansion he had built, and then it hit him like a bolt of lightning. This wasn't just about a game anymore. The game was a trap. A reflection of something far darker than he had ever understood. He hadn't been playing Minecraft. He had been building his fate. Suddenly, Ryan's phone slipped from his hand, crashing to the floor with a loud clatter that echoed through the empty room. But there was no time to pick it up. No time to think. His mother, still staring blankly at the wall, suddenly turned toward him with a slow, deliberate movement, and for the first time, Ryan saw something. Her eyes weren't just vacant, they were cold, devoid of emotion. And in that moment, as the weight of the situation pressed down on him like a vice, Ryan realized the terrifying truth. His mother wasn't just lost in some trance. She was a part of it. She was a part of whatever this was, and he didn't know if anyone was coming to save him. Ryan's head spun as he stood in the kitchen, His mom's vacant stare piercing through him, the weight of the situation crushing him under its sheer complexity. He barely noticed the phone slipping from his hands, his thoughts tangled in confusion and fear. The news story he had just read about the murder eerily tied to the Minecraft mansion he had created played over and over in his mind like an endless loop, but now it didn't seem to fit. Everything felt wrong. His mind raced as the pieces seemed to fall apart, each one slipping through his fingers just when he thought he had it figured out. His mom, the house, the game, it all felt like a nightmare, something he couldn't wake up from. He needed answers. He needed to know what was happening before it was too late. But as he turned to face his mom again, something stopped him. The room felt different, as though the air itself had shifted. The cold, mechanical way she had turned toward him earlier wasn't just unsettling, it felt intentional. Her eyes, that blank emptiness he had seen in them, suddenly narrowed. A shiver ran down Ryan's spine as he took a step back, heart racing in confusion. What was going on? He hadn't expected her to move, hadn't expected her to even notice him. But as the seconds stretched on, her lips parted, and the words that came out of her mouth sent a chill through his bones. "You're the one who opened the door, Ryan. Not me." Her voice was calm, almost too calm, and for a moment, Ryan thought he might be hearing things. It couldn't be true. She had to be under some kind of spell, trapped in this nightmare he didn't understand. But then, something deeper within him, something primal, told him this wasn't a simple situation. Something far more insidious was going on, something much more than just strange occurrences and disturbing coincidences. His mom wasn't just a victim in this story. She was involved. In that instant, his mind flashed back to the videos, the cryptic messages, and the strange clues that had been leading him deeper into a maze with no clear exit. There was one thing he had overlooked, one detail that now screamed for his attention. The mansion. The crime scene. The eerie video that showed his body lying in the driveway, lifeless. He had assumed it was some kind of twisted prank or a hallucination, but now he realized the key to everything was right in front of him. The mansion wasn't just something he had built. It wasn't just a virtual creation. It was a real place. A place he had visited in the past, a place buried deep in his memories, memories he had tried to push away. Ryan's breath caught in his throat as the realization hit him like a truck. His mind scrambled to put the pieces together, to remember what he had buried for so long. He had been to that mansion once before, years ago, during a family vacation. He'd wandered off, exploring the abandoned house while his parents had argued, and there was something there, something he had found. Something he hadn't understood at the time but had carried with him, locked away in the back of his mind. He had found a strange, old book, its pages filled with symbols and cryptic writing. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew it was connected to the place, connected to the mansion. Somehow, that book had been the key to everything, the key that had opened the door to this twisted game, this nightmare. Just as Ryan's thoughts began to form a coherent thread, he heard a soft click behind him, the unmistakable sound of the front door unlocking. His heart stopped. No one else was supposed to be there. No one had been in the house since the last time he'd checked. His eyes darted toward the door, his breath shallow, and then he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, drawing nearer. But it wasn't his mom who had moved. It was someone else. Someone who shouldn't have been there at all. The figure that stepped into the kitchen was like a shadow, its face obscured by a hood and dark sunglasses, but something about them felt familiar. The person paused just inside the doorway, their gaze fixed on Ryan as though they had been waiting for him. A cold shiver ran down Ryan's spine as the person spoke in a calm, measured voice. "I'm sorry it took this long to find you, Ryan. But you need to know the truth. Everything you think you know, everything that's happening right now, is not what it seems." Ryan's pulse quickened, his mind spinning with a million questions. Who was this person? What truth were they talking about? He opened his mouth to speak, but the stranger held up a hand, silencing him. "You've been following the wrong trail. This game you've been playing, this Minecraft mansion you've built, wasn't your idea, Ryan. It was mine." The words hit him like a slap in the face. This person, whoever they were, had been behind all of this. But why? And how? A heavy silence filled the room as the stranger slowly removed the hood, revealing a face Ryan had not seen in years. His stomach dropped, his blood running cold as recognition hit him like a freight train. It was Jake. His best friend. The same Jake who had sent him those cryptic messages, the same one who had warned him to stop digging. But why was he doing this? Why had he been part of the game, part of the nightmare that had been creeping closer and closer with each passing day? Ryan felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. The person he had trusted more than anyone, the person he thought he could count on, had been playing him all along. Jake's eyes met his with a look that was both apologetic and cold, as if this was all part of some plan he couldn't escape from. I didn't want to get you involved, but you're the one who started it. You're the one who triggered everything. This house, the game, it's all a test, Ryan. A test to see if you're worthy. His words were so detached, so calculated, that Ryan's chest tightened with the weight of betrayal. You built the mansion. You set the stage. And now, everything you've seen, everything you've felt, it's part of the game. You're playing for something far bigger than you realize. Ryan could hardly process what he was hearing. The world around him felt like it was cracking open, revealing a truth he wasn't prepared for. The mansion wasn't just a game, it was a ritual, a twisted experiment, and he had been unknowingly drawn into it from the very start. Everything was connected, the strange clues, the haunting messages, his mom's eerie behavior. It was all part of a larger, darker plan. But the real shock, the real twist, was something that Jake hadn't yet revealed. The game wasn't about Ryan. It was about them, about everyone who had been part of it, every person who had unknowingly played a role. And now, as Ryan stood there in the kitchen, trapped in a nightmare that had only just begun to unfold, he realized that everything he thought he knew about the world, about the people around him, was a lie. And the worst part. It was all his fault. Ryan stood there, his chest tightening with every word Jake spoke, as though the room had shrunk around him, suffocating him with the weight of everything he had just learned. His mind was a blur, racing to make sense of the impossible situation he had found himself in. The truth was unraveling before him, but the more he understood, the less control he had over anything. The house, the game, his mom's strange behavior, it was all part of something far darker than he could have ever imagined. Jake, the one person he had trusted with everything, now stood before him, the very picture of someone who had played him from the start, who had manipulated him into a twisted game he never chose to be a part of. But the worst part wasn't even that. It was the realization that Ryan had no idea how deep this went. Who else was involved? How far did this go? And what was he supposed to do with all this now? Jake's expression was hard to read, his eyes cold yet strangely resigned, as if he had already accepted something that Ryan was only beginning to comprehend. The silence between them stretched out, heavy with unspoken truths. Ryan's mind kept circling back to the question that seemed to echo louder than any other. Why? Why had Jake done this to him? Why had he dragged Ryan into something so dangerous, so terrifying? The betrayal was unbearable, like a knot in his stomach that he couldn't untangle no matter how hard he tried. Ryan had always considered Jake his closest friend, the one person he could trust with his life. But now, that bond felt like a lie, a twisted joke. Everything he thought he knew about his life was crumbling, and all he could do was stand there, frozen, caught in the web of deception that Jake had carefully spun around him. As Jake took a step closer, his voice softened, but the weight of his words only made things worse. Ryan, you have to understand. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. It was supposed to be a test. But you're in too deep now. There's no turning back. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest, and every word felt like a hammer pounding into his skull. He wanted to yell, to demand answers, but instead, a quiet desperation settled over him. He had never been good at confrontation. He had always preferred to solve problems by thinking his way out, by finding a way to piece everything together. But this was different. There was no way to think his way out of this. He couldn't fix it. The danger was real. The stakes were higher than he could have imagined. Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. His throat felt tight, like he was choking on the very air around him. He wanted to shout at Jake, to ask him why he hadn't said something sooner, why he had let Ryan get involved in something so deadly. But even as the anger bubbled up inside him, there was a voice in the back of his mind that whispered a much darker thought. What if Jake had never really been his friend? What if Jake had been playing him from the beginning, knowing all along that this moment would come, the moment when Ryan would finally start to piece everything together? It felt like a nightmare, one that he couldn't wake up from, no matter how hard he tried. And then Jake dropped the bombshell that sent Ryan's world crashing down once more. You want the truth? Fine. You've been looking for the wrong answers all this time. The mansion. The game. It was never about you or your mom. It was about the people who created it. They're not just watching you, they're testing you. All of this was just to see if you could figure it out. If you could make it through. Jake's voice grew lower, more urgent now. The stakes are bigger than you realize, Ryan. Bigger than any of us. There's a reason you were chosen. And there's a reason you have to make a choice now. You need to decide what's more important to you, the truth or your life. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and Ryan felt the blood drain from his face. What did Jake mean? A test? A choice between truth and life? Every part of Ryan's brain screamed at him to run, to get away from this insanity, to walk away from the nightmare he had stepped into without even realizing it. But there was no way to outrun the truth, not now. Not when everything pointed back to him. His connection to the mansion, to the game, to the events unfolding around him, he couldn't escape that. No matter how far he ran, no matter how hard he tried to pretend this wasn't real, it was happening, and it was happening to him. Jake's eyes bore into his with an intensity that made Ryan's skin crawl. They're coming for you, Ryan. And they won't stop until they get what they want. You can run, you can hide, but it won't make a difference. You've been marked. You've already been part of the game from the start, whether you knew it or not. And now, you have two options. You can take the truth and risk everything, or you can walk away. Just know this, walking away won't keep you safe. They'll find you, no matter where you go. Ryan's heart raced. He couldn't breathe. His body felt like it was being crushed under the weight of the choices he now had to make. How had it come to this? How had everything spiraled so far out of control? But as the seconds ticked by, the reality of the situation began to sink in. There was no easy way out. No matter what decision he made, it seemed like the consequences would be irreversible. If he decided to face the truth, to uncover everything that had been hidden from him, there was no telling what he would find or who he would lose in the process. But if he walked away, if he tried to hide or ignore it all, he knew it wouldn't be over. This game would never let him go. And then, just as Ryan thought his mind couldn't take any more, another bombshell dropped this time, not from Jake, but from his own mother. Her voice, once so distant, so cold, cut through the tension like a knife. Ryan, you're already too late. You're already part of this. She spoke as if she had been waiting for the right moment, for the right time to reveal it all. Ryan turned slowly, his heart hammering in his chest, his mind racing as he processed her words. He had trusted her. He had believed in her. But now, as she stood there, her eyes still empty but somehow more knowing, he realized that the woman he had once turned to for comfort was as much a part of the nightmare as everyone else. You don't understand, do you, Ryan? She whispered, her voice thick with something that almost sounded like regret. You're not just playing a game. You're living in one. And when it's over, when they get what they want, nothing will be the same. Ryan's world tilted on its axis, the truth crashing down around him like a tidal wave. The mansion, the game, his mom, Jake, they were all pieces of something far bigger than he could ever have anticipated. And now, as the weight of what he had to choose pressed down on him, he realized that no matter what path he chose, there was no going back. The consequences would be irreversible. He was trapped in a nightmare of his own making, and the worst part was that he didn't know if the truth would set him free or destroy him forever. Ryan's heart hammered in his chest as he turned toward his mother, her words lingering in the air like poison. It was all too much. Too many secrets, too many lies. Everything he had trusted, everything he thought was solid and real, was a lie. Jake's cold admission, his mother's distant confession, it was all part of something bigger. But even in the chaos, Ryan had a sinking feeling that the worst was still to come, that the things he was starting to uncover were just the tip of the iceberg. What had started as a strange coincidence, a game he had stumbled into, was now spiraling into a nightmare that had reached far beyond his understanding. As the tension in the room grew unbearable, Ryan's mind scrambled to process what was happening. The game, the mansion, his mom's involvement, it was all connected. But what did they want? What was the point of all this? Jake's words echoed in his head, reminding him that this wasn't just a test, it was a test for everyone. There were others involved, people watching him from the shadows, orchestrating everything, pulling the strings without him even knowing. His mom had been a part of it, Jake had been a part of it, and now Ryan was realizing that he wasn't just a pawn, he was a player in a game that went deeper than anything he could imagine. It was then that the next wave of betrayal hit him like a ton of bricks. Just as Ryan was beginning to understand the true depth of the conspiracy, the doorbell rang. His head snapped up. It was so sudden, so out of place, that for a moment he thought he might be imagining it. The doorbell again. The silence that followed was suffocating, but the urgency in the ring was undeniable. Someone was here. Someone who shouldn't be. His mom didn't react. Jake's eyes darted to the door, then to Ryan. It was almost as if they had expected it. Ryan's instincts screamed at him to run, to hide, but he was frozen in place. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He needed answers, but what if the answers were worse than the questions? What if the truth would destroy everything he had left? He had already lost so much: his trust in Jake, his relationship with his mother, his grip on reality itself. Could he survive losing everything else? The doorbell rang again, sharp and insistent, snapping him from his thoughts. This time, Jake stood up, his expression unreadable. "Stay here," Jake ordered, his voice cold and commanding. "Don't make a sound. Don't even breathe if you know what's good for you." Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but before he could, Jake was already walking to the door, his footsteps measured and purposeful. Ryan's stomach churned as he felt a wave of unease wash over him. Something was terribly wrong. His mind raced through 100 different scenarios, none of them good. What if Jake had been playing him the whole time? What if this wasn't just about the game or the mansion? What if it was bigger? Much bigger. As Jake opened the door, Ryan stood in the darkened hallway, straining to hear anything that might clue him in on what was happening. He had no idea who was on the other side, but his gut told him this was the moment when everything would change. Jake's voice, usually so calm and controlled, was tight with something Ryan couldn't place. "You shouldn't have come here," Jake hissed. The words, laced with anger, sent a chill down Ryan's spine. Whoever was on the other side of that door, Jake clearly didn't want them here. That was the first thing that made Ryan realize that things were far worse than he'd ever imagined. Then, the voice from the other side spoke. Ryan couldn't make out the words at first, but it didn't matter. His blood ran cold when he heard it, the voice was too familiar. It was his father's. The man who had disappeared years ago, the man who had abandoned him and his mom without a word. Ryan's mind raced. What the hell was going on? Why was he back now? And why was he involved in this twisted conspiracy? The man he had thought was lost to him forever was standing on the other side of that door, and he didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. It didn't make sense. The next few moments passed in a blur. Ryan's father stepped inside, his eyes meeting Ryan's with an intensity that was almost too much to bear. "We need to talk," his father said, his voice dark and low. "And you need to understand that what's happening now, it's bigger than you. Bigger than me. It's bigger than any of us. And it's been building for years." Ryan's head spun as he tried to make sense of the man in front of him, the man he thought had abandoned him for good. His mind raced through the memories of his father's departure, the way things had fallen apart, and how, despite everything, he had never once stopped searching for answers. But what could his father possibly know about all this? What could he possibly have to do with the game, the mansion, the cryptic messages? The pieces of the puzzle were scattered around him, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to fit them together. "Ryan," his father said, his eyes locking onto him with a mixture of sadness and regret, "you don't realize it yet, but you've been a part of something much bigger than you. The game, the mansion, your mother, all of it. It's not just about us. It's about something far more dangerous." His father's voice dropped to a whisper, his gaze shifting to Jake, then back to Ryan. "You've been part of a project. A long-term experiment. You were all chosen, carefully selected to participate in this. You thought it was a game, But it was never a game. It's a test, Ryan. A test of your loyalty, your strength, your ability to follow through. And now, the end is near. And when it's over, only one of you will survive. Only one of you will be left standing. Ryan's heart pounded, the shock of his father's revelation settling deep into his bones. What had he gotten himself into? What kind of twisted experiment was this? And how could he possibly escape it now? The truth, once so elusive, was suddenly clear. He had been caught in a web of deceit, a conspiracy so vast and intricate that it was impossible to know where it began and where it would end. And the worst part was that Ryan didn't know if he could trust anyone anymore. His mother. His father. Jake. They were all part of this nightmare, all connected in ways he couldn't begin to understand. The stakes had never been higher. Ryan had to make a choice, and it was one he wasn't prepared for. Every decision from here on out would determine his fate. Would he stand up to the conspiracy that had been manipulating him for so long? Or would he try to escape it, knowing that the odds were stacked against him and that someone, maybe even someone close to him, would eventually turn on him? The game, whatever it was far from over. But Ryan didn't know if he had the strength to survive it. Not anymore. Ryan's head spun with the weight of the revelation. His father's words were still echoing in his ears, a constant hum that refused to quiet. Everything he thought he understood had been upended in the worst way possible. His world had fractured, each piece breaking into 1,000 shards, revealing a web of lies and deceit that stretched far beyond anything he could have imagined. He had been part of something far darker than he could have ever predicted, and the people he had trusted most, his mother, Jake, even his father, had all played their parts in a twisted game of survival. And now, standing at the center of it all, Ryan realized that there was no going back. There was no escaping what was coming next. The room was suffocating, the air thick with tension as his father and Jake exchanged looks, both knowing that the final moment had arrived. There was no more hiding, no more secrets. The stakes had been raised to the point of no return. Ryan's mind raced, frantically searching for something, anything, to help him make sense of this nightmare. But the more he tried to piece things together, the more the puzzle twisted, the more it became clear that this was no longer just about him, it was about the culmination of everything that had been set in motion years ago. And now, he was standing at the center of it all, caught between two worlds, one of lies and manipulation, and one where the truth had the potential to destroy him completely. He turned to Jake, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you drag me into this? You're my best friend, Jake. I trusted you. I trusted all of you." Jake's face, usually so calm and collected, twisted into something cold and almost unrecognizable. There was no hint of the boy Ryan had grown up with, no trace of the friendship they once shared. "You think I had a choice?" Jake spat back, his voice a low growl, filled with bitterness. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to betray you?" His hands balled into fists at his sides, his knuckles white. "This is bigger than any of us, Ryan. You were never supposed to be part of this, but you are. And now you can't back out. None of us can. We're all just pieces in a game that's already been set in motion. And when it's over, you'll understand why we had to do it. Why we had to use you. It's the only way to survive." Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as his father stepped forward, his face tight with something that could almost be called regret. "Jake's right, Ryan. But you still don't see the full picture. You think this is about us? About your mom or me or any of the people you've trusted? It's not. This goes deeper than you can imagine. You're not just a pawn in a game, you're a test subject. And you've been set up for something much bigger than yourself. The game was just a way to measure you, to see if you could make it to the end." His father's voice dropped to a whisper, the words heavy with finality. "You were always meant to win, Ryan. You were always meant to be the one who survived." Ryan's pulse quickened, his mind spiraling with the implications of what his father was saying. He had been chosen, measured, tested. His body went cold as the truth began to settle in. He wasn't just a player in some sick, twisted game. He had been groomed for it. From the very beginning, he had been set up to be the victor, but at what cost? What had he lost to get to this point? What was the true price of survival? And then, as the weight of the situation began to press in on him, something in Ryan snapped. The pieces fell into place, and the anger surged up from deep within him. His hands clenched into fists, his voice shaking with fury as he confronted his father. So what now? Do you want me to thank you for this? For turning my life into a game? For making me a pawn in some sick experiment? You don't get to tell me what my fate is. I don't care what you think, or what you've set up. I'm not going to let you control me anymore. Jake stepped forward then, his face cold and determined, a look of finality in his eyes. You still don't get it, do you, Ryan? You think this is about your choices? You think you can just walk away and everything will be okay? You can't. You've been part of this from the moment you stepped into that mansion. You're not in control anymore. None of us are. Ryan's blood ran cold as the truth hit him like a freight train. This wasn't about choices anymore. This was about survival. This was about him, Jake, and his father all being caught in a trap that had been set years ago. The game was far from over. Before Ryan could fully process the depth of the situation, a loud crash interrupted the tense silence, and the door to the room burst open, startling all of them. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light outside. Ryan's eyes widened in shock as the figure stepped into the room, revealing none other than his mother, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. But it wasn't just fear, there was something else, something darker, something terrifying in her eyes. She took one step inside, and then the words she spoke chilled Ryan to the bone. You don't understand, Ryan. It's too late. The experiment isn't just about you anymore. It's about all of us. And we're all part of it. Her voice trembled, but there was a cold edge to it, a quiet certainty. I didn't have a choice either. None of us did. You were always meant to be part of this. And now, she paused, her gaze flicking to Jake and then to Ryan, her expression hardening. Now, it's time to make the final choice. The choice between saving yourself, or saving everyone else. Ryan stood frozen, the weight of his mother's words crashing into him like a wave. It was too much. Too many lies, too many betrayals. His world, once so clear, had shattered completely. The game, the mansion, the twisted conspiracy, everything had led to this moment. And now, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, Ryan knew that the final decision was his. Would he be the one to break the cycle, to expose the conspiracy that had haunted him for so long? Or would he fall into the trap, becoming nothing more than another piece in the game, another pawn in a deadly experiment that had been set in motion long before he ever understood what was happening? But just as Ryan opened his mouth to speak, a final twist of fate sent everything spiraling into chaos. As the door slammed shut behind them, a sharp sound filled the room, a beeping noise, coming from the wall. It was low at first, barely audible, but then it grew louder, and a series of lights began flashing ominously. Ryan's heart skipped a beat as he realized what it meant. The entire room had been wired, the walls filled with surveillance equipment, and that sound, was it a countdown? His father's expression shifted, panic creeping into his eyes as he backed away. No. It can't be. We were supposed to finish it before, but before he could finish his sentence, everything around them went dark, the lights flickering before plunging them into total blackness. Ryan's breath hitched in his throat. It was too late. The game was over. And the final twist was the realization that no matter what he chose, there would be no escape. The countdown had begun, the darkness was suffocating. Ryan's breath came in shallow gasps, his pulse hammering in his ears as the seconds ticked by, each one feeling heavier than the last. The beeping of the countdown was relentless, echoing in his mind, drowning out everything else. His eyes darted around, trying to make sense of the shadows that now consumed the room, but all he could see were shapes, figures moving in the dark, their silhouettes indistinguishable from one another. The lights had gone out, but the cold, flickering flashes from the countdown timer illuminated everything in brief bursts of red and blue. For a moment, Ryan felt like he was back at the beginning, back in that mansion, back in the game, where nothing was what it seemed. But now, with the truth laid bare before him, there was no escape. The people he had trusted, the ones who had always been there, were now as much a part of the trap as he was. His father, his mother, Jake, they had all been players, not just of the game, but of something far darker. And now, here they were, in the final moments, the ticking timer, the only thing that stood between them and the consequences of their choices. His hands shook as he stepped forward, his feet moving almost mechanically as the seconds counted down. He didn't know what he was doing, or even why he was still moving. Was it instinct? Was it survival? Or was it the last shred of hope, the desperate need to find something, anything, that could make sense of all this madness? His mind was clouded with 1,000 thoughts, memories flashing before his eyes, his childhood, his friendship with Jake, the times he'd spent with his mother, and his father's betrayal. It all seemed so far away, so distant now, like a dream he couldn't quite remember. But there was one thing Ryan knew for certain: he couldn't let it end like this. With a burst of determination, Ryan lunged for the control panel on the wall. He didn't know what he was hoping to find, maybe an off switch, maybe some kind of answer, but when his fingers brushed over the buttons, he realized that it wasn't that simple. It was all part of the game, part of the test, and it was up to him to decide how it ended. His heart raced as his hand hovered over the final button, the one that would either end it all or set them on a new path. There was no going back, no more second chances. The decision was his, and the weight of it nearly crushed him. But just as his finger pressed down on the button, the countdown froze. The beeping stopped, the lights went out again, and a strange, mechanical voice echoed through the darkness, almost like a whisper, but unmistakably clear. "Congratulations. You have completed the final test. You are now free." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan stood there, heart pounding, not knowing if he had won or if he had lost, unsure whether the game was really over or if it had just begun. The timer had stopped, but nothing else changed. The air felt thick, heavy, as if something, somewhere, was watching him. He looked around, trying to make sense of it, but there was nothing. No answers. No resolution. Just the cold, empty room, and the faint hum of the system shutting down. His mother, his father, Jake, all of them stood frozen in place, their eyes wide, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The game had ended, but at what cost? What did it all mean? And more importantly, what was left for him now? The answers he had so desperately sought were still out of reach, just beyond his grasp, like shadows fading into the night. And yet, as the room began to brighten slowly, revealing the same cold, sterile environment it had always been, Ryan realized that the true nature of the game was never about winning or losing, it was about survival. It was about the choices they made, the paths they took, and the consequences that followed. In the end, he had made it out alive, but he wasn't the same person who had entered. The game had changed him in ways he couldn't fully understand, and though the pieces had been scattered and the truth had been revealed, Ryan knew that there was no real closure. No neat, happy ending. But as he glanced at his mother, his father, and Jake, he understood something deeper. The game had been designed not just to test them, but to shape them, to break them, and to push them to their limits. It was a reminder that the line between right and wrong, between trust and betrayal, was never as clear-cut as they had thought. Each of them had played their part, each of them had made their choices, and now, they had to live with them. And then, just as Ryan began to feel the weight of everything pressing in on him, there was one final twist, one last, haunting realization. The control panel, which had just powered down, flickered back to life. A message appeared on the screen, its text bold and chilling: "Test complete. New participant selected. Phase 2 begins." Ryan froze, his breath caught in his throat. The game, whatever it was, wasn't over. It had just moved on to the next phase, and he was no longer the one in control. The truth was, the game would never truly end. The stakes would always be raised. And someone else, someone he didn't know, would soon be thrust into this twisted world of survival, manipulation, and choices. As the screen went black again, the message lingering in his mind, Ryan understood. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun for someone else. And with that, the story left a lingering echo in his mind, a question that would never fully fade. Were they truly free, or had they just become part of something bigger, something far darker than any of them could comprehend? The mystery remained unsolved, the conspiracy stretching beyond their reach, and the game continued. Only now, it wasn't about winning. It was about survival. And it always would be.